Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live, Fort Bend ISD. I'm Dr. Christy Whitbeck, Superintendent. We have a team here today ready to just share information about our 2023 May bond, and also really to allow interaction with you, an opportunity for you to ask questions. So this is one of the first times we're doing this, at least in a long time. It's another way for us to reach out to the community. We're out and about giving presentations, but perhaps this format will be more convenient for some of our constituents, and you'll be able to let us know that at the end. So I'm going to start by turning it over to Deputy Superintendent Steve Bassett. He's going to share about 5 main things about this bond and its contents. As you know, our website's filled with information, but then we have a team here, and they can kind of introduce themselves afterwards, ready to answer questions depending upon what category it falls in. So thanks. Look forward to interacting with you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Whitbeck. Let me share my screen just so we can kind of get started with just a brief presentation, and then we can get into our Q&A after that. All right, can you guys see my screen okay? All right. So Proposition A, our bond for the first time is in 3 propositions. And so we're following state law. We're required to do that. The biggest one is Proposition A. Proposition A, $1.18 billion. Almost half of it, well, really half of it is for aging schools and facilities. Our facilities are 28 years old, 28 years old. And so if you have a house that's 30 years old, you've spent, besides paying off your mortgage, hopefully, you've spent some money on it. Maybe a new roof, maybe even a new HVAC, probably new HVAC, certainly a dishwasher at the very least. There's things, investments that you've made, and everybody uses their homes. Well, our school buildings are that old, but they also get really used. I mean, they have kids running through them. That there's high usage. Okay, and so there's a lot going on with our school buildings, and we really need to keep them up. So just an example of some of the things that some of the work that's being done. 61 of the schools, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. I'm not going to read all these to you, but these are just some of the examples of things that are being done and are needed at all of our campuses just to keep them up, to repair things, but then also trying our best to bring them up to some standards that we can achieve with the funds we have available to us. All right, so some of the big rocks that are in the big projects that are in our bond here. We have 3 rebuilds. The largest one is the Clements High School rebuild. I think Clements is the 3rd largest high school we have in the district. It's not the oldest, but it is the one that has the highest facility condition index, which tells us this is our kind of our worst building. And so why are we saying that? Well, mainly the biggest thing causing issues with Clements is foundation issues. So it's different at this site than other sites throughout the district. But not only is the foundation sinking in some areas, it's also heaving in other areas. So it's going up in some, and so it's not. Maybe if it was consistently sinking, we wouldn't have a problem. I don't know, but it is really a mess because it's going up and down in different places. And so there's pictures out there. There's a ton of information on our website about the Clements rebuild and why building it is essential. Rebuilding is essential. Okay, so we're also looking at some of our elementary schools, and we're also looking in terms of trying to get efficient with the district. And so we have 2 pairs of campuses, that are elementary schools in the district on the north side, and then also on the east side, where we're trying to rebuild some of these campuses. And these are all of these 4 elementary schools are title schools. And we certainly do believe that all of our children are deserving of the best we can get to them. And so Mission Bend, we're going to use the prototype for Neill Elementary. That'll be rebuilt. Mission Bend will be rebuilt. You can see a couple renderings there of what that could look like. And then on the east side of the district, Briargate is going to be rebuilt. Now Mission Bend is going to be paired up with Mission Glen. Those kids will be going to Mission Glen while the rebuild is being done. And then with Briargate, that's going to be paired up with Blue Ridge. And so you can see some renderings there. That'll be the Lakeview prototype. We're trying to have both of those campuses open by August 2025. So, just a mere 2 years away. We are going to put together tours soon, for folks from those two areas to be able to go see the Briargate folks and Blue Ridge folks, to hopefully, get on a bus and go see what Lakeview looks like. And similarly for the Mission Glen and Mission Bend folks, for them to be able to go see what Neill Elementary looks like, because these are really beautiful campuses. And so hopefully that'll be we'll be getting those scheduled soon. This month. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. We are still growing as a school district. We're still growing, and so our 16th middle school is needed. It's over in the 521 corridor. Actually, the site we're looking at there is at Highway 6 in Post Oak, and so that's going to be giving relief and having kids feed into both the Hightower and Crawford high schools. And so that'll give relief to Thornton Middle School, which right now is bursting at the seams. And so we're going to be building that. We already have the design for that, so we don't have to go through the design phase. It's just the construction phase that we have to go through. But as a middle school, it still is a big project. We're definitely still bursting at the seams from an elementary perspective along the 521 corridor. Ferndale Henry is our, and here's a good example of how we're trying to make the best use of our buildings, be good stewards of taxpayer funds. Ferndale Henry is our alternative program. It's on the far side of the district. What we're going to do is we're going to move the alternative program back to MR Wood in the central part of the district, which I think will serve. It's better for a transportation perspective, and the kids that are coming from various parts of the district don't have to be on buses as long, which I think is certainly good for them. But we're going to save a lot of money by doing a renovation and addition at Ferndale. That we think we can get that done for 18 million versus a new campus, which would be like the last one for 47 million. So it's big savings by using a building like that. And then the last one is an elementary in the Grand Parkway corridor. It's really because all the growth in Harvest Green. And so it's going to be there to help that area out. Our buses, a lot going on the transportation side. I mean, we bus 35,000 kids a day. They travel, so much a year. We actually cover the circumference of the earth every day, over 25,000 miles per day. We're going to be getting new buses, but also one of the big rocks on here is getting a new transportation center. Hodges Bend was the last one that was built, and that was some time ago. We had 49,000 kids at that time, and so we have 80,000 kids now, and growing. And so more buses equals more maintenance needs, and so we need more service bays. And so having something out there on the 521 corridor is going to help us save money. And then also that we're going to have a compressed natural gas fueling station out there. So we're also trying to use green energy. And one other thing I'm going to mention that's not on here is we're trying to come up with a tagging system with our kids using the ID cards, so that we can the parents can be able to see the progress of the bus that they're on and how things are going. And so we're working on that, and hopefully some more information will be coming out on that soon. Okay. We also have a lot going on from a technology perspective. Now in Proposition A, we have 67 million that's for refreshing our network. Okay, and that's in Proposition A. And we know that the network was funded with 2014 funds. It's 8 years old. And the useful life for networks like that is really 5 to 7 years. And so we've had some service issues on the network. We need a new network, and that's part of Proposition A. But we also need refreshes of our computers. And so by law, anything related to just computers, devices, that has to be in a separate proposition. So that's why you see a separate proposition for the first time in any of the bonds we've had. So we have 52 million here to refresh computers for students and staff. As you know, the IT and technology is incredibly important from a education perspective. These days, it's way different than it was 20 years ago, and it's got to the point even where the students need devices to be able to test for STAR. I mean, there's no more paper and pencil, anymore when it comes to the STAR test and the test for the state. So it's very important that we have a reliable network, and that that we also have the devices that the kids can use when they're testing. All right. Lastly, we have to have another proposition if we have a centralized athletic facility. Okay, so we have an auditorium that's on this bond. This is Proposition C. So why do we need it? Katy ISD has 90,000 students. They have 7 swim centers. They have 7 options for places for their athletes to swim. We have 2 right now, and so and the one that's we have one in Central, close to the central office, and then we also have one at Hodges Bend. And so all the athletes, they really will struggle with driving or whatever else. This is slated to be also on the southeast side, but to be more specific, we're actually looking at having it at the same site as the middle school 16. Okay, so all the way on the other side of the district, so that'll really be good for those students. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about money and the impact to our average taxpayer. Our average taxpayer home value, from even with some of the growth that we're experiencing, or whatever else, our average home value, taxable value is $300,000. Okay, and so we do a really good job of managing our debt, our debt and our debt service rate and such. But we are looking at having a very small increase. But what does that mean to the average home owner? We're talking about $2.50 a month. $50 a month. Let me put that in perspective. I don't know about you guys, but I go to Whataburger. All right, and so that is less than a junior Whataburger. Okay, and so on a monthly basis, just thinking about maybe I have to give up a junior Whataburger, but that's the size of that for the average taxpayer. Now, for the average taxpayer, now we have our senior citizens, and so one thing that folks got to understand is if you're over 65 and you have the exemption, you don't just get the exemption automatically. You have to apply. You have to apply for the through the appraisal district. But once you prove your age, you do get that exemption. But while that exemption doesn't help with city taxes and county taxes, mud and lid taxes, it does help with school taxes, and the school taxes are the biggest piece of the bill for if you look at your property taxes. And so if you're over 65, you have that exemption, this bond is not going to have any impact to your taxes. Okay, finally, this is since 2019 they changed the law and to put some more into what is needed in the ballot language. And so at the bottom of the ballot that you'll see for each of the propositions, for all 3 propositions, you'll see, in bold capital letters, this is a property tax increase. And we're not trying to hide from that. It is a property tax increase. The reason why I'm saying, we can cover that with $2.50, for the average taxpayer. But if you do have the exemption and you get the ballot, you're going to see this. You're going to see that there's a property tax increase that's going to be on there. But even if your amount is frozen, we can't change the ballot language, and so that's what's going to be on there. All right, we're almost done here with the PowerPoint. Early voting is starting April 24th. What's different about early voting this time? We actually have a Saturday and Sunday options. Okay, and so there's a lot of opportunity. And Fort Bend is really the only thing on the ballot. We have our board elections and then also our bond propositions. Okay, and then obviously there's the website. There's a ton of information out there on the website, including FAQ, pictures, all kinds of things. You can see there's a search feature to see what's going on at my campus, where you can see what is planned at each and every campus that we have. All the campuses have sheets like that. There's some new campuses, and it just says it's a new campus, so you can see, like Thornton, they're not getting something new. They just opened, and Lakeview and some of the others, but that's only 4 of the campuses. All 78 of the other campuses do have sheets where we spell out all that detail. And I think that's it. So let me stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Steve. This is Sherry Williams, the Communications Director. I'm the disembodied voice you hear. Also joining us, we have Carolina Fazzetti, Executive Director of Design and Construction, and we have Deputy Superintendent Beth Martinez. So everybody you're looking at now can answer just about every question, and questions have been coming in. So let's get to the first one. It's very easy and kind of a nice question. They want to know, where can I get a yard sign in support of the bond?
Wow. Okay. Well, there's in school business, the folks on here, we can't advocate. Okay. We can't tell you what, how you should vote, yes or no, or whatever else. All we can do is really, describe the need and why something is needed or whatever else. But there is a group that does help us with that. They're totally separate from the school district, and so I think if you look up, Fort Bend ISD, excellence in education. There's a political action committee. They do have yard signs. They have lots of them, and so if you reach out to them, and if you have trouble finding them on the website, you can reach back out to us later, and we can help you with that.
Thank you, Steve. The next question comes from Jennifer. She says, mold has been an issue for several schools recently. What changes is the district making to prevent school closures that may occur because you have to do mold remediation at a school?
Okay. You want to take a stab at that, Carolina?
Sure. So I'm Carolina Fazzetti, Executive Director, Design and Construction. I think it comes down to the equipment that we have in place that runs these schools. And so if we're able to fund and purchase and maintain those chillers and air conditioning units, and they're in good condition, then the temperatures within the buildings are in good condition, and then mold just doesn't grow and it doesn't develop. And so I think it going back, it circles into being able to provide the equipment that these buildings need and keeping them in good order so that mold doesn't appear within the campuses.
Yeah, the one thing I would also add to that is that, we also on the bond, we have window replacements and things like that. And so, if we can keep, the windows up as well, then, we're that much less likely to have leakage, water leakage when we do have, monsoons and whatever else. And so, anyway, it's, and bond funds are used to help all those issues, everything that I just mentioned, and then what just Carolina mentioned as well.
That's a good connection. So if we have properly working HVAC systems, that decreases the chances of a mold issue occurring.
For sure.
Next question is also from Jennifer, and she wants to know, with the bus driver shortage, how does the district plan to actually utilize a new bus barn and new buses?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we are trying our best to increase bus driver pay and also obviously teacher pay. We're very hopeful that the state is going to step up to the plate this session. I've seen some nice bills that I like out there, but I've seen some other bills that I haven't liked as much. But hopefully they'll step up. But we are required by law to provide transportation to our students, and we're not gonna abandon them. And so we have to figure out a way to increase the pay for staff, especially teachers, and especially where we're required, like bus drivers, so that we can provide those services. And so, it's not gonna, yeah, go ahead.
No, thanks, Steve. I would also add in on that particular one that the average age of the buses is around 10 years, and they have so much of a life. And so most of the buses that are there are kind of rotating the old ones out, bringing in the newer ones that are also going to be equipped with safety belts, air conditioning, and, just upgrading, so to speak. So it's not always just an add-on. A lot of times it's a replacement of the old fleet. So kind of a combination answer, I guess.
Right. And then, but also when you get into, recruiting bus drivers, the more locations we have for depots, the better from a recruiting perspective, because, if we have some folks that live just farther out on out east of the district, then we have a depot that would now be that much closer to them, where hopefully they'd be able to be willing to sign up with us.
Okay, thank you all for that response. It makes a lot of sense. Here's a question. It's about Clements. It's from Mayor Didi. Why is there a preference to rebuild Clements completely rather than to do the less expensive thing, which involves repairing the foundation?
Okay.
So I would say that when we look at campuses and recommend campuses for rebuild, we look at many different factors. Now, here at Clements, foundation is one of the main factors or most costly items to repair. However, there's many other systems, aging systems that the campus has. And so at some point we got to weigh in the cost of repair compared to the replacement cost. If we were to repair within the next 5 years, we have to infuse about $113 million into this building, and you would still have a 40-year-old building with 40-year-old bones. And so you weigh in your options, and when it is so complex, where the cost and the repairs are so disruptive within the campus, at that point, we're better off rebuilding, putting in $222 million into that campus, and we end up with a brand new campus that is not going to require so much money moving forward on repairs or maintenance.
Okay, and I'm gonna, oh, go ahead, Dr. Whitbeck.
No, I just would add to Carolina, and she can answer this because she's the true expert in this area, but the life expectancy of this rebuild would be what? We're at 50 to 60 years. Is that correct? That we would be, I mean, obviously, people voting on bonds 20 years from now are going to be looking at perhaps a roof or something, just because everything has a life within it. But I think that that's critical as well. If we just do it, still investing such a high amount at 113 million, then we're still going to be every bond having more things for Clements. So as time goes on, you've ended up spending more. And the kids are still dealing with, as she said, 40-year-old bones. Last night, I have a car with 95,000 miles on it. And last night, very late, got blink, 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 transmission and all kinds of things. Anyway, I got it quit on me. And so today my husband is taking it in. So I think it's kind of like these real life things that happen to us. I don't know what the autopsy is going to be, but it may be that it's not good for me to repair that car versus upgrading it or something of that nature. And I think that, or replacing it. And so I think that's also the kinds of things that we have happen to us in real life. And it's really the same thing. It's just on a much bigger scale.
The next question is a repeat, and I'm going to warn you guys, we just like to respect the fact that everybody took time to submit a question. So some of these questions you may say, we already answered that. Also, we may have people going in and out of the live feed. So bear with us when we ask something that's the same question. And this one is from Mayor, wait, he disappeared on me. There he is, Mayor Jessup of Meadows Place. And he also wanted to know, why are you not rebuilding Clements?
Why are we not?
Yes, why are you, I'm sorry, why don't you repair Clements instead of rebuilding it? Sorry, my questions got jumbled around.
And I think it's the repairs that are needed for Clements are very complex. They're time consuming, they're disruptive. And so it is not only the foundation, which again sits on very much expansive soils. And so that repair alone on a 400,000 square foot building, it's a massive undertaking. But on top of that, we have aging systems. And so we have aging switch gears and roofing and chillers and galvanized piping. And when you combine all those aging or outdated systems and the cost and the effort for repair, at this point, we're better off replacing and starting new.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Mayor Dede again. Why is security camera repair for Ridge Point not included in the bond, with teen drivers and several injuries and lots of accidents? It's important. I'm not sure I completely understand that question, but I hope y'all do.
And security cameras are included in the bond under the safety and security category. And so it is district wide. We are not showing that on campus by campus level, because the goal is to address the entire district. And so we are carrying funds through this bond to replace and repair all cameras that are down district wide.
Thank you. Svenja Elicat ask, why is it that the district takes years to address building repairs? Meaning, if there's a building problem, why is it not addressed immediately versus waiting for more problems to accumulate?
So that's a good question, and I'll tell you, our district, I don't think has done a good job overall, and I'm saying from the past 2 decades, of keeping up with its buildings. When you see how much more other districts have invested in their aging buildings, it's really a stark difference. We had bond 2014, and that only had it had less than 200 million in it for older buildings. We had a bond that was only 500 million, but for a district our size, you got to remember we're the sixth largest district in the state. We should have had a larger bond. And then even this, we had identified $1.7 billion of building needs, and so we just weren't able to get enough into that bond. And then in 2018, we still had so many needs that were identified, even more, than before. And we didn't even, we included less than half of those, in that bond. We're just now, I think, getting to the point where it's like, hey, wait a minute, we really do have to have more of a focus on the priority ones and the priority two deficiencies that we have, so that we can get ahead of this. And getting ahead of it isn't going to happen overnight. There's only so much work that can be done because we have 100 facilities. There's only so much work that can be done, within a 3 or 4 year time frame. And then by that time, it's better off to go back to the public, for another bond. But the fact is that when something breaks, that's unexpected, we do not have just a lot of money in our general fund, which is our largest fund, to be able to spend on fixes for HVAC or leaky window or whatever. We need those funds to be able to pay our teachers and our bus drivers and others like that. So we're trying our best to get ahead of things, but I have all kinds of information I can show you on how we've lagged compared to other districts in terms of the investments that have been made in older buildings. And so we're trying to catch up on that. But this bond, way more than bond 2014 and 2018, is doing a lot to address that, because we're putting in over about 600 million.
So Steve, just to add on to your point a little bit, so any money that comes out of the general fund that would have to go to some major repair or renovation project or a building emergency is less money for salaries, books, and everything else that pays out of the general fund.
No, and that's exactly right. And I've been going to our employee meetings and on. I was at a faculty meeting yesterday at Missouri City, and teachers are tired. I mean, teachers, they're listening, and I can just see it. Okay, so hey, what are you going to do for us about teacher pay? And I remind them that the folks on this call, teacher pay is our number one concern. I mean, the bond is critical, but teacher pay is our number one concern. But so why am I bringing that up in the middle of a bond presentation? Because if we don't have a positive election, okay, and if we have to put off all of these projects yet another potential 6 months for a November election, or even farther down the road, that means that we won't have bond funds for some of the essential fixes that need to happen for instruction to happen, like on the network, for example. We need 67 million to fix the network, and having a workable network is huge and critical for instruction. But if the network goes down, and we would have to put some money from the general fund into working on the network and repairing it in the spots that need to be repaired. And so exactly like you said, we would have that much less money to be able to put into pay for our teachers and bus drivers and other employees.
Thank you, Stephen. He's referring to the IT network. Dr. Whitbeck unfortunately has to leave us. She has an appointment that she must get to, but do you want to say some final words before you go?
I asked them to bump it for 15 more minutes, so I'm gonna stay with you. I really don't want to leave this. I actually need to interview a candidate that I've rescheduled several times. It's a critical position in our district. So, but I'm gonna bump just 15 more minutes so I can still remain a part. The only thing I would add to the last question Steve said is just keep in mind that when the team assembled the 2018 bond, they did it with the idea that the next bond would clearly be in 2021. That was advertised, that was part of it, kind of like a two-part plan. And then the pandemic happened, and then it didn't happen. And so we are 2 years behind. That's why you see everything that says we haven't had one in 5. And so that's another reason why we're a little behind on some of these repairs and things. So it'll be good, hopefully, to get caught up.
Okay. And then Deputy Superintendent Martinez, did you want to just say a few words about a point Steve hit on, and that is the morale of teachers right now, how we're trying so hard to retain all our good teachers, and how they need to be shown some love?
Absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity to clarify and provide some information about that. So our teachers all of the time, I just cannot emphasize enough the importance of the role of a teacher, right? Without a teacher, none of us would be where we are. We have learned from incredible instructional specialists and educators throughout our lifetime on this screen alone, and I'm sure in the audience as well. And many of you may remember teachers who impacted your life in such an incredibly positive way. And unfortunately, some of you may remember some that didn't, but also shaped who you are today. And teaching is complex, it is challenging, it is rewarding, it is amazing, and it is hard. And teachers don't often hear the congratulatory stories or the celebrations or the thank you for all of the decisions they make within a day and all of the positive impacts they make within a day. Very quick to hear feedback that might be critical or something they're not doing correctly or something that a parent or a staff member or a supervisor may want them to do better or different. So, in this time where we are in the world with all of the learning gaps created by the COVID experience, the pandemic experience, particularly here in Fort Bend, some of our challenges that we have faced in our most recent, what we're dealing with now in terms of our financial situation and wanting to be able to reward teachers for the hard work, with their increase in salary to stay competitive so that we keep our wonderful teachers. We don't lose them to other school districts or to surrounding school districts, and that we can recruit high quality teachers to come to this district and to stay in this district. It is as I said, an incredibly rewarding career, but it's also can be exhausting at the same time. And so I think it is so important. Dr. Whitbeck has stressed to our leaders in the district, and I know I've heard her in the community as well say, be quick to praise and slow to criticize. And that doesn't mean that none of us and none of our teachers want that critical feedback. I think by nature, teachers are learners and continuous learners, and they want to improve as we all do. And so that is important and it does have its place. But in absence of being able to pay teachers what I believe most people in this world believe, they deserve, in the constraints of public ed and our financial constraints within that field, kind words, positive affirmations, and feedback that leads to positive improvement and positive growth. Those are things that we all thrive on. And I just would encourage everybody to reach out to somebody who's made a positive impact and spotlight. Even the small things can just have incredible mileage. So, it's just a time of helping each other, supporting each other, and paying really close attention to our teachers, because that's one career, one field that none of us would be where we are without a teacher in our life, and many teachers along the way.
All right, thank you.
Sherry?
Next question is from, yes.
Well, I was just going to add, because I can't see the audience, but the fact that they're engaging and here tells me they're involved. So I think it's an appropriate time to also suggest that they look closely at the bills that are being proposed in the Senate and the House. We see some that are okay, and we see some that are alarming. And just case in point, look closely at what people are doing with this large amount of surplus billions. It's 37 billion, more than ever in the history of the district. Of the state. But I would look closely at what is happening for public education. And right now we've got several bills that just increase our allotment $50 a child. And just to give you an example of what does that really mean in Fort Bend, we could take every penny of that money and put it into salaries, and it would be less than 1% for our employees. That's, to be honest, I believe that will be perceived as insulting. So I do, because of this audience and knowing you're involved, I encourage you to look at what's going on and and reach out to your elected officials.
Thank you. Elisa Harkavina, Ask any idea about another middle school in Grand Parkway corridor. Not only is Neill overcrowded, but Bowie also needs attention, and then there's a follow-up to that.
Beth, you want to try that one?
Yes, thank you. There was a board action that created some space at Bowie with a rezone into Garcia for some, pardon me, into Crockett for some students. And that creates capacity at Bowie. And our 10-year projection shows that, if we follow that trajectory, that will impact the space at Bowie in a positive way and alleviate some of that pressure. Now we're watching closely the growth in the Harvest Green area. We know that we're also in a tricky time with some charters popping up in that area. And so we hope we don't lose some students to charters, but that's a very real possibility, and that would impact the capacity at that campus as well. We're not showing, based on the projections in the area from our external demographer over the 10-year planning horizon, that another middle school in the area would be needed. If you look at the combined capacity between Bowie and Crockett and Hodges Bend and Garcia Middle School in that kind of proximate area, there is capacity over the 10 years within all of those buildings.
Thank you. Her follow-up is there an estimated timeline for opening the new elementary school in the Harvest Green area?
I'm going to ask Carolina to respond to that follow-up, please.
So at this time, we're looking at opening that campus in 2026. It would be the fall of 2026.
Thank you. And I feel like I need to say this, that is, if the bond passes. If the bond does not pass, these things will not happen. Paula Walton asked approximately where in the Southeast District will the natatorium be located? Or is there a proposed or tentative location?
Right now, our plans are for that to be at the same site as the middle school, and that's at Highway 6, Post Oak, and McKeever. That area over there. So we bought land there some time ago, and so both of those facilities can fit on that site.
Okay. Jennifer says, so the technology proposition is too late since STAR is online this year. How is the district going to guarantee students have the technology to take the STAR test this year?
Beth, you want to help?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. So we have been transitioning in preparation for the requirement that all students test online over the last couple of years. And truly that's something we experienced during the pandemic when we were forced into that in some ways. And so our instructional technology department, our informational technology department that supports our instruction and technology is fully equipped to handle that. The benefit is that it's about a 2-week window of time, so you don't have all of the students at the same time testing. So there's a different schedule for all of the different areas of the testing from elementary to secondary, and a span of time that that doesn't put everyone on the system at the same time. So we are prepared, and it is expected to go smoothly, and it did last year when we had a very large number of students testing online. There was an option for many of the campuses to choose whether it was going to be paper-based or online for their students. And we had a high number that did choose online, and it went fairly well. Couple of little bumps, but those were taken care of immediately, and we expect no problems as we enter into that season this year.
It's good to hear. Laura Miller wants to know what will happen to the faculty at the schools that will consolidate, and what will happen to the elementary schools that will be closed.
Okay, let me take Christy, Dr. Whitbeck, you want to say something?
Well, I'll address the faculty. That's already in motion, and they are looking at merging and what do they need. When it comes to the number of children, regardless of if they're located in 2 separate places with, say, 350 kids in each, or one building with 700, you still need about the same amount of kindergarten, first, second, third grade teachers, and so on. Where the merging gets trickier is in the principal, system principal, librarian, nurse, counselor, and those that you tend to have 2 sets of. And that's why it's more cost effective to actually have buildings that are a little larger rather than have so many very small ones. So in both the Mission Glen, Mission Bend merge, those have already been looked at with seniority, but all employees are being placed perhaps at another location to do their job. And so no one will lose their job. Same thing with Blue Ridge and Briargate. No employees are losing their job. They're just looked at based on our policy that we have, DK, and it outlines exactly the order in which you go with your years of experience in the district. And so that's being handled. And then I'll let Steve or Beth handle part two.
Yeah, so just to keep talking about the staff, we've committed, even with the 15, almost 16 million in reductions that we had last year, and we've had reductions of over 23 million that we've identified for the current year. We're not doing it with pink slips or layoffs or anything like that. We've committed to, we have shortages, we have staffing shortages. We're keeping all of our employees that want to keep working here. We're going to find a spot for them, and so. Just make no mistake about that. Now, when it comes to this coming year, the Mission Bend will be the one that'll be rebuilt. So those students are going to go to Mission Glen, and they will be there for 2 years. Okay, they will be there 2 years. Hopefully, we'll have that building up and running August 2025, and then all those students will go back to Mission Bend. On the east side, all right, we have Briargate and Blue Ridge. That's going to be a little bit different from the perspective of, if the bond passes, yes, the Briargate kids, that's where the rebuild will be. The Briargate kids will go to Blue Ridge. They'll be there for 2 years. And then when the after 2 years are over, then they'll go back to Blue Ridge. All right. If the bond doesn't pass, hopefully it does. But if the bond doesn't pass, the Blue Ridge kids are going to go to Briargate because of the site where Blue Ridge is. It's on an industrial. It's more an industrial road, McCard Road, and so if we are going to have those two communities consolidated, we are going to prefer to have them in Briargate. But the goal would be, again, to eventually go back to the community with another bond that would include the rebuild for Briargate Elementary.
Okay. K-Stone is upset. She says, why are you misrepresenting the tax impact? Tax valuations increase annually. Also, if there is a tax rate increase, it will also impact our property taxes. She says you really should reword your claims. She feels it's deceptive.
Well, we certainly have no intention to deceive anybody. Okay, when we're asked what the impact is, we have to pick a point in time. And so if somebody has a property value, a house property value of 300,000, that taxable value. So again, you have the homestead, exemption, and and which is supposed to increase, and then you also have our other tax rate that I'll talk about in a minute. But the impact we're looking at on the debt service rate is actually the rate would go up 1 penny. So the impact for that average person, if you have a home value of taxable value of 300,000, that's $30 per year, $2.50. And so that's just the truth. That's the math. That's the math for that. Now, obviously, there is value growth. I mean, I got my statement yesterday. It's 33%. I almost fell out of my chair. Now, I'm probably going to fight it, but anyway, but what is also going to happen, and this is where we get into a lot of confusion. And I could talk about this for a semester, and we're talking about just school finance in general. Our tax rate has been going down. Why has it been going down? Yes, we've reduced the debt service rate 2 times in the past 5 years, but the state has been compressing the M&O rate, the maintenance and operations rate. And so I'll bet anybody on this call lunch, and I'm on video here, okay? I'll bet anybody on this call lunch that even if we did increase the debt service rate by a penny, our overall rate is going to be less than $1.13. Okay. Now, whether or not those reductions in the taxes are enough to overcome your own personal appreciation in value, I have no idea, because I don't know how much it is for every single different taxpayer. Okay, but we're doing our best to describe things in a clear and simple manner. But I'll be happy to talk to you more about tax rate compression and what's happened in the past and whatever else. And so, that's the fact. Now, the thing about it is, and I'm a taxpayer too, and we don't like to pay more property taxes. All right. But we also know that school districts they can attract people or they can repel people. We have people, thousands of people move. I think there's over 1,000 families moving to the state every day. Okay, from places like New York and California and Illinois and whatever else. I mean, Texas and Florida are still growing in population, not just internally, but people moving in. And so when people are moving in here, why are we in the successful position we are in now? It's because we've had great schools, we've had zoning, we've had a great community, so we've been attractive. But when we get to the point where we can't fix our schools or whatever else, or we can't recruit teachers or whatever, then we are going to have a hard time keeping staff, but also attracting new families. And so, it's all goes into it. And then, while we don't want to pay more property taxes, we certainly like it when our property taxes grow, when it's time to sell our house. And we're able to turn that house around really quickly and make some money over having all those years of property value growth. And so anyway, I understand the angst about that, and we've had more growth recently than we've ever had, and we might have that again this year. But we do benefit from that in the long run. When I say we, I'm talking we as taxpayers if you own. But I'll tell you, the frustrating thing from my perspective, since we're struggling with school, with teacher pay and transportation and whatever else, here's just the facts. If we collect $1,000 more from you, okay, the state actually pays us exactly $1,000 less. All right, we're not keeping that. We're not keeping that money on the M&O side. We're just not. That is exactly the way it works. I can sit down and show you the template. If that number goes up, we go down dollar for dollar. And so the state is the one benefiting from all the property value growth, because we only get paid based on the number of students we have, okay, and the attendance. And so that's how all that works. But I'm easily accessible on the emails, and I think my email's out there on the website. It's Stephen with a V Bassett. But I'll happily talk more about taxes if I didn't give you enough information now.
Thank you, Steve. The viewership spiked a little bit when you bet everybody lunch. Dr. Whitbeck, Dr. Whitbeck, how are you doing? You
I'm
gotta
doing
go.
well. I do.
Okay.
And again, this is a new format, or at least one not used for years. We will continue it. I know Sherry will tell you about that. We have another one scheduled if this is convenient. But again, reach out to any of us. Our names, I think, are on the screens. And, our district is, first name dot last name at fortbendisd.com. We will get you answers. We want to be open and transparent. I really appreciate Steve's in-depth answer about the tax rate. I too got my statement last night, and value increased $100,000 in a year. That's ludicrous. But keep in mind, school districts don't set the value. That's your appraisal district, and so therein also lies some legislation to cap and control that I think there is some discussion out there about that. But just know that we don't have that control over it. We're dealing with it just like you are. But anyway, I enjoyed this opportunity. I thank you for getting involved. Thank you for asking questions, even the hard ones. That's what we want. We are going to always be open and honest with you. So I take care and stay in touch with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whitbeck. So glad you could join us, and thank you for making time you did not have. Next question, Michaela Ruggs. When will Hightower feeder pattern have a dedicated middle school? There is no middle school that serves the Fresno area.
Beth, you want to try that one?
Well, Steve, I'd kind of like to bounce it back to you in terms of location of middle school 16 and speaking about that. And I do want to, before I do, I'm going to provide my own clarification to that question. And so I would ask Sherry if you could look for confirmation that I'm on the right path for that clarity. I feel like this is coming from some historical conversations in the community about the geographic proximity of a middle school that is in the geographic attendance boundary of Hightower High School, rather than, as we may see it on the planning side, a middle school that serves students that feed into Hightower High School. So I think that's the context, and I think Steve can speak to that in terms of the location of Middle School 16. And then I will add to his anticipated answer in that what middle school, how that middle school feeds into the high schools in that area to relieve overutilization or to better utilize those campuses would be a part of a bigger planning process that would follow our policy regarding attendance boundaries and establishing that. So that's, at this point, would be forthcoming as a part of that later process to determine the actual boundaries.
So the location of the middle school, for those who weren't on earlier, the location of the middle school is at Highway 6 and Post Oak. You know, I think the McKeever Road is also, you know, one of the boundaries, you know, for that. So it's on the far southeast side of the district, you know, 521 to help relieve the 521 corridor. All right. So, you know, we haven't finalized zoning, you know, yet, and so much depends on the projections of the you know, for students over a 10-year time frame. But we definitely see students from that middle school going to Hightower and then others going to Crawford. So that will not be a dedicated school, all right, for Hightower. Now, I mean, right now, you may or may not know it, but right now, Lake Olympia, 90% of the kids at Lake Olympia right now do go to Hightower. 90% of the Lake Olympia students. So it's almost as close as you can get to having a dedicated middle school. Now, we understand that that's not in the Hightower zone, but that's just the way that the zones have worked out over the decades that the district has grown. You know, one thing that people don't understand is that whenever there's development that's happening, the developers don't give us property. Okay. We have to buy property. We have to buy property at market rates. And so, you know, I wasn't here when I was where some of the 521 corridor stuff was bought. Yeah, I was around, and some of our recent purchases. But when you're talking about, you know, some of those historical purchases, you know, I think, you know, they got that site when they were able to get that site, and the needs were being able to be met. You know, when Hightower, you know, was open and the kids were going there. And so it wasn't from this up until this last bond in 2018 where we said, hey, we're gonna buy another middle school site, and we're going to you know, to help in the Hightower area. But we always said that it was going to be something, because we knew of the long-term numbers, that it would be something to relieve Hightower and Ridgepoint from a middle school perspective, those feeder patterns. And so we looked and looked and looked for land. And that was, in the end, that was the best option, you know, for land, you know, that could impact Hightower. And so that's what we ended up purchasing. And that's where the design was done for that new building to fit on that site.
Okay, thank you, Steve. We have a follow-up from Svenja Ellicat. She says she's still not understanding. Her kids are only in kindergarten, so she's new to all of this. So Carolina, she wants to know, if something breaks at a school, isn't there an allocation or some kind of fund that the district can draw from to make the repairs?
So yes, we do have funds in the maintenance and operations side of the house, which is the general fund, to maintain and repair equipment. So if a roof is leaking, facilities would address that leak. If an air conditioning unit breaks down, facilities can look at it and repair it. What we don't have is enough money for replacement. And so just like a house, 20 years later, you have to replace the entire roof. And perhaps 8-10 years into it, you have to replace your entire air conditioning system. It works the exact same way with the schools. And what we don't have is enough funding within our general fund to replace equipment. We fully depend on bonds like this one to be able to buy the new chillers and the new air conditioning units and the new roofs, to make sure that the buildings are functioning and running properly, that we have temperature control in the buildings, that they're not leaking, that the electrical and the plumbing works properly. And so for those major replacement, we do rely 100% on bond funds.
Thank you. And then, Steve, did you want to jump in? We have about 5 minutes left.
No, I think many years ago, I think that the district, when state funding, allowed the districts to keep more of the property value growth that they've had, there was enough funds in that maintenance budget to be able to cover some one-off things like that. But over the years, the state share has just been getting less and less and less. We haven't been able to keep the property value growth. They've changed the funding formulas, and frankly, we just do not have the funds. We just don't. And it's not just us. I mean, it's all school districts throughout the state.
And, I have to say, I hear a lot in the public, people say, oh, I didn't know the VATRE was going to be to pay teachers and give staff raises and teacher raises. So since it did not pass, that's not happening? No, that's not happening.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
Tammy Marino, it's not a question so much as a comment. She says, I think what Steve and Carolina were explaining is that there is no additional funding for those kinds of repairs, as Carolina just said, as we just said. So bonds are often needed, she says, to fund these fixes, and we are behind in our bonds. True statement?
True statement. Thank you, Tammy.
Catherine Watson says, we have never had to rebuild Willow Ridge or Dulles, and they are older. Is it because they never had foundation issues? Carolina?
Okay, so I think I can address Willow Ridge for a second. Back in 2014, bond 2014, we had allocated close to $10 million to Willow Ridge for life cycle deficiencies improvements, right? So to make building repairs to make sure the building was working properly. Along the way in bond 2014, and it was around 2016, we had the mold problem with Willow Ridge. And so what happened then is we infused an additional almost $12 million into Willow Ridge. So we not only, of course, remediated the mold, but that led through major projects within that additional $12 million that we put into Willow Ridge. And so we were able to, of course, remove the mold contaminated materials, but we provided new paint and new duct heaters and new casework and new flooring and new chillers, and we repaired the sprinkler system. And so all those were upgrades done to Willow Ridge throughout the 2014 bond. So Willow Ridge at that point received almost $20 million. Then in bond 2018, Willow Ridge received almost $9 million for additional repairs, right? We provided new turf for the football field and accessible ramps and drinking fountains and scoreboards and boilers and so forth. And so I think that along the way, we have been taking care of Willow Ridge. Willow Ridge is slotted to receive a large amount of money with bond 2023. And so we really don't see a need to replace Willow Ridge. To tear it down and rebuild it. Even though it's an old campus, we have been putting money into that campus to improve it, repair it, and make it better. And we of course have plans to continue to infuse money into that building to make sure that it's up to par with the other high schools.
Thank you. And did you address Dulles?
Dulles does not have any major foundation issues that we could look into. Again, going back to Clements, foundation issue is one of the most costlier issues to address, complex and disruptive. And so Dulles is an older campus, but again, we plan on continuing to infuse funds into that campus to make sure that it's running properly, that it's keeping up, and that it can continue to run. Of course, I cannot tell what would happen in the future. We evaluate these facilities every 4 years prior to each bond to make sure that it makes sense to continue to infuse funds to repair them and keep them up and running. But don't know really what will happen in the future. But for now, the plan is to continue to make sure that the systems are running and the building is kept up and that it can properly serve students.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you all. We're out of time. We do have a week. This has been great. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We have more community meetings coming up in person and virtually. On April 18th, we will be at Clements High School. It will include a short tour to see some of the deficiencies in that building. On the 19th, we'll be at Willow Ridge in person. On the 24th of April, we will be at Bush High School in that Northwest feeder pattern. And on the 25th, we'll see you back here again on Facebook. Thank you all very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.